When you're dealing with burnout, it can cause you to make decisions out of a place of desperation as opposed to a place of clarity. And because of this, you become a excellent target for high ticket items that appeal to your desire to want something different, to want more out of life. And that's what I want to talk about in today's video using my own personal experience as an example of exactly that. So let's get into it. So, one of the main side effects of dealing with burnout is that it can be very expensive. I've talked about this in a previous video. And the reason why it can be expensive is because we'll tend to spend money on different things to kind of fill a void or to remedy our feeling of exhaustion and just wanting something different. So this can show up in many different ways. It can show up as spending money on self-care. It can show up as spending money on, retail therapy. Even healthcare expenses can, arise when you're dealing with burnout, especially if it's severe enough to affect your health in any way, shape, or form. So it can also show up as just constantly looking for an answer. You might be spending money on, different type of courses, trying to learn something new, uh, things of that nature. So it can show up in many different ways, and that's exactly what happened to me. And for me, I ended up spending a ton of money on a course that appealed specifically to the things that I valued the most. And I didn't have a name for it then. I couldn't really identify what it was then, but now I am definitely clear on what it was and what it is still to this day. So let's talk about it. All right. So about 5 years ago, I came across the trade and travel course taught by Terry Igioma. She's, very well known in the personal finance space. And she's a very successful trader. And I, came across her. I believe she was a guest on a podcast that I was listening to. It caused me to look into her course, and her story resonated with me so much, and it appealed to the two of the three things that I value the most, which is time, location, freedom, and ultimately financial freedom. Because if you're, really good at trading, investing and trading stocks actively for income, you could definitely, become, make a good amount of money and become rich, right? But I don't want to use the word rich because I don't want this to seem like it was just some other random get rich quick, course, because it's definitely not that. There's definitely no, false hopes or any, thing the promise that you're going to be rich or anything like that. It's not like that. I did a bit of due diligence and determined for myself that it was something worth investing in, because to me, being able to finally live the lifestyle that I had been desiring for so long, I couldn't put a price tag on that. And to me, it was worth it. So this is what happened. So because at the time I came across this course, it resonated with me so much because I was in fact dealing with burnout. I knew that I was exhausted. I knew I just wanted something different. I was just tired, and I was just so tired of problem solving. And even though I was doing really well, I was climbing the corporate ladder in tech and gov tech. I was hitting all the milestones. I was doing everything right. I was getting promoted. Everything was actually on paper was looking really good. I just still wasn't fulfilled in my life. And I was desperate for a different option, a different way, something that looked different, where, I didn't have to, that where I could get more, to have more time, more control over my time and, where I worked from, right? Those things have always been really important to me. So along comes the trade and travel course. Now, I was like, yes, this is, when I came across, I was like, yes, this is exactly the type of thing I'm looking for. It's not a traditional, way to make money. It's an additional way to, it's additional source of income that's not, it's an additional source of income that's not, tied to, it's something I could do on my own time, right? And, and it would afford me to be able to have money to travel or to be just something that I would be able to do, from anywhere in the world, right? And so I went all in. Now, this course came in two options. You could either just do the stock trading course, or you could do the stock trading course as well as the options bundled together, which was the VIP course. And because I had felt like I needed to make up for lost time, I went all in on the VIP course, which was both stocks and options, right? Because again, a bit of perfectionism, high achiever, overachiever, all of those things, right? And if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm not going to, just halfway do it. I have to do all the things all at once, right? So, and that was how I went into it, because I needed to make up for lost time. I've shared this in other videos. I was a late starter when it came to investing, and I was just trying to catch up, right? I felt like I was, at the time, still in my 30s, and I felt like I just didn't wasn't quite successful in the way that society, says labels you as successful, right? On paper, though, everything looked good. I was doing really well. Still early in my career. But in any event, I ended up spending about $5,000 on this course, right? And this is where my mistake was. My mistake is that because I was making this decision out of a place of out of false sense of urgency, and I just felt like I had to kind of make up for lost time. I over committed to doing everything, if that's the right way to put it. Like I just took on too much. I took on too much. I took on too much too fast, without really being clear on if I was in fact in a place to be able to commit to doing it. And ultimately, if you can tell, I was not in a place to be able to fully carry out and commit to both learning how to trade stocks and options at the time, because I was already extremely exhausted. And even though I was motivated to do the course, I actually went through the course just fine. Realized the options was a little bit more complicated than I thought it was going to be. So I just kind of focused on the stocks part. Now, the big question is, was it worth it? The honest answer is, I don't know. I can't tell you, because I never really dedicated the time I felt was really needed for me to determine if, it was worth it. I, you know, at the time, I started off, pretty good. I had begun taking trades. I was breaking even on a lot of trades. I'd make some money, then I'd lose some money, then I'd make some money. So, and just learning it overall, I say that I broke even on most of my trades. And I kind of just lost steam with it. I just lost steam with it because once I finally kind of got into it, there was also a lot of other life transitions happening. A lot of different things were changing in my life that I couldn't really focus on it, and it kind of got put in the back burner. But what's interesting enough is that even though I wasn't using what I learned in the course to actively trade for income, I was actually applying what I learned for long-term investing for like my retirement accounts. And honestly, it was working out really good in that aspect, but I wasn't, that's for when I retire, decades, you know, down the road. So it was kind of like I'm still in a gray area on whether or not this is really a viable option for me as an additional source of income. So that was my mistake. My mistake was that instead of just focusing on just learning the stocks and maybe getting that down and seeing if I had it in me to even just commit to that, I just took the whole course. I took on the whole course, and I have yet to get into the options part of it. I went through the course just as to get familiar with it. And once, like I said, once I realized that it was a bit more complicated than I thought, I just kind of left that alone and went back to the stock part. And then ultimately ended up not really following through completely with that. And just really you know, getting a routine, building the consistency in order to follow through with it. And that was my biggest mistake. So I'm still trying to determine if it's worth it. And the reason why I bring it up, because here it is 5 years later, and it has resurfaced now that I'm in a place um, where I'm really trying to define what I want my life to look like, and I'm trying to make decisions more so from a place of clarity as opposed to out of desperation and a sense of urgency, right? And so now I'm revisiting going back to actively trading, stocks as an additional source of income. And what really sparked this was just recently, Terry Gioma, released a book. She wrote a book, and it just came out a couple of weeks ago, um, called The Risk Worth Taking, which I am planning on getting around to reading at some point. But I pretty much know her story. But the book is loosely based on her story, and I think it incorporates what her trade and travel course is about. But she just put it in a book. And it just kind of reminded me, number one, how expensive, my decision was that I made 5 years ago. And, now it appears that it would be available at a very, very less costly price tag in the form of a book. And I'm kind of just curious to compare, right? So, in any event, the moral of the story is that when we're dealing with burnout, it can make us, you know, desperate for a change, right? Even though we're not 100% clear on exactly what that change might be and exactly, how to, make a strategy, make a plan around that. We just want an exit, and we might be just willing to do anything that is appealing right away without really giving it deeper thought. Now, I thought I had done that, but I didn't do it to the degree in which I needed to. I just was more so evaluating whether I should take the course, just making sure that it wasn't some, janky kind of scammy situation, which it wasn't. All right. So just have my little notes here so that I can remember where I'm at. So ultimately for me, what ended up happening was I was trying to buy my way out of a bad situation as opposed to addressing the situation, right? And seeing what needed to be changed. Um, which, then I didn't know that that's what I was dealing with. Back then I didn't know that I was dealing with burnout. I know that now in hindsight. I just knew that I just didn't feel great about how things were going, even though on paper I was doing successful, and I just wanted something different, right? And the moral of the story that I want to leave you with is just, if you know that you want changes, something has to change in your life, right? Whether you're dealing with burnout or not, you're just feeling unfulfilled. Whatever whatever you decide your exit, what you want your exit strategy to be, right? Just be able to really think about it and be clear and get super clear on what it is you want and how it is you are going to go about, achieving it. And also just check that you're in a place to actually follow through with whatever the decision is that you make. Because for me, I wasn't in a place to follow through with it. And now here it is 5 years later, where I feel like I am more so in a place to follow through with it. And so that's what I'm going to focus back on doing it. But just before you spend like large sums of money on something, especially when you're looking for an exit strategy, just ask, where you're making that decision from. Is it coming from a place of desperation, of urgency, or is it coming from a place of clarity? And I'll leave you with that. My name is Kaosha, and I am showing up to remind you to choose yourself, because that is the ultimate wealth. Don't just think about the change that you want in your life. Go make it.